Ember Witch. Book 1. The Lich. Volume 1. Black Tragedy. Chapter 3. Half-Blood. October 21st to December 21st, 458 BME. Fragment 24. Revelation. Vera, Fevra and Hana made it to Shikari an hour before sundown. They brought their horses through the town, approaching a group of guards that were stationed before the town hall, and stopped.
Good evening, gentlemen. We require an armed escort from Shikari to Myopia under the name of the Morden,
Vera said in fires, and one of the guards looked up to her.
And what would your escort entail?
He asked in their native tongue, looking over the 3 horses, catching a glimpse at the Noky elven slung over the back of Hana's horse.
Prisoner transport. We are in a hurry, so gather as many men as you can and a cart,
Vera said, and the man looked at her confused.
Why should I?
He asked. Then Vera dismounted from her horse, stepping to Jinra. She pulled his head up and showed the man his face.
We were contracted by Kysha Morden of Myopia and ruler of the Far East. This man has been charged with collusion, corruption, murder, necromancy and kidnapping. Follow your Morden's orders or be tried alongside him. Either way, I am getting this prisoner to Myopia by spring,
Vera said, and the guard swallowed hard.
Of course, my lady, right away,
he said, then turned around to gather everything needed to transport a prisoner. Vera dropped Jinra's head and he mumbled something.
What do you want?
Vera asked, and Jinra looked up to her.
It would be nice to have some water,
he replied, as if he didn't care he had been slung over a horse the past week. Vera sighed, then pulled her water skin out. She uncorked it and tipped it into his mouth. He drank deeply, but spilled most of what he was given.
Thanks, I was parched,
Jinra said, then looked back to the ground. Vera shook her head, then walked over to her horse.
I have to get this letter sent so Kysha, Neela and Cress know we are on our way,
Vera said, then walked to the town hall, leaving Hana and Fevra on their horses. She came back a few minutes later to see a horse-driven prisoner cart being pulled up to their horses. She began untying Jinra, who dropped to the ground with a thud. She picked him up with the help of several guards, who dragged him to the cart.
Bind him before you put him in. I already did before we arrived, but we can never be too careful, especially since he's an elven,
Vera said, and the lead guard bowed, obeying her command. Jinra was enveloped in a green glow, then was placed in the cart. They locked the door and climbed into the seat.
When you are ready, my lady,
the guard said, and Vera mounted her horse. She kicked her feet and began riding, with Hana and Fevra following close behind.
Our fears have been realized. The Elven are in fact planning an invasion, and they used the necromancers and Takashi as the catalyst. Vera, Fevra and the High Priestess of the Church of Vera have killed the necromancers and captured a Noky Elven. In her report, Vera also detailed that the necromancers not only forged a blood blade but also an undead abomination. Luckily they were able to destroy both, but it is exactly as we feared. We must prepare for an invasion. There is no telling what the Elven will do now that we have stopped their initial plan for the east,
Neela said as she handed Kysha the letter that had arrived by L a few hours earlier. Kysha took the note and read over it with a frown.
I will call the council with the Mordens and prepare the city for war. However, the Elven will need to take Meridia in order to reach us. It is unlikely they would sail around the continent, but there is a possibility of that. The Morden of Ghost Island must prepare her citizens for a possible battle. I will inform her to set a blockade between the island and Shikari. She will have my blessing to station troops ashore to bolster the defenses of Shikari. When Vera and Fevra arrive, inform them that I will need to speak to them,
Kysha said in a commanding tone.
As you wish, Your Grace,
Neela replied, bowing.
History will change because of this. No matter what happens next, the world will change,
Kysha said softly, and Neela looked at her with a heavy heart. Although the majority of the races were taught both their native tongue and a common language, both Kysha and Neela were far more comfortable speaking Fires. Kysha spoke one word that told an entire story.
Koyaku.
Neela looked at her in acknowledgement, taking in the word.
Do you really think it will come to that?
Neela replied, and Kysha nodded her head.
Koyaku no ida Kysha.
Neela replied, then walked out of the throne room. Neela had hoped that Kysha would refrain from using Koyaku, but in these trying times the Firen needed a strong leader. In the event that the Elven made their way to the east, the current Dermorden wouldn't be strong enough to make the right decisions. Neela was bound by loyalty to obey Kysha, and if this was her wish she would do whatever was needed. She walked down the halls of Kysha's estate, then came to the door. She nodded at the two guards stationed to both sides, and they opened the door letting her leave. She took the long walk from the estate to the upper district. The noise of the streets sang out like a symphony. She ignored it all, letting her thoughts of the future play out in her head. She came to the building she was regretting having to be at and stepped in the door. The girls all dressed in scantily outfits or not dressed at all. They approached her attempting to sell their bodies and time. Neela politely rejected their attention to the dismay of the women around her, one of which had been playing with Neela's cloak.
What pleasures can we provide to you, my lady?
An older woman said, approaching Neela.
Oh, it's you. Come to my office.
The woman continued, noticing that it was Neela who was standing in her business. Neela nodded and followed her as the older woman pushed her way through girls flirting and laughing with their customers. They made their way into the back office, and the older woman gestured for Neela to sit. Neela sat down and got comfortable, awaiting the woman to sit across from her.
I take it that you are here about the Saito girl,
the older woman said, and Neela looked up to her as she took her place across the desk.
Yes. I understand that you had to pull her body from the window. I am sorry for your loss, Seto Ayame. I tried to keep Grass from visiting to avoid such a situation, but once Persian had been convicted of murder, there wasn't anything I could do about keeping the information of his execution from reaching her mother.
Neela replied, and Ayame held up her hand.
Please, it's Ayame, no need for the formalities. I had hoped that Taina would recover from her depression, but it was too much for her to handle. We discovered her body early in the morning and had her taken to the graveyard that afternoon. Unfortunately, she was a favorite amongst the regulars and her sisters desperately miss her.
Ayame said with sadness in her voice.
I would like to pay off her debt. The Saito family has gone through enough as it is. Their name is clear and their daughter is free from any relationship with Haraku,
Neela said, then pulled out a large bag of coins. Ayame looked at the bag for a moment and turned her head in confusion.
Her debt was 6,000 gold. How could you possibly gather this much?
Ayame asked as she picked the bag up and began sorting through it.
I am not at liberty to answer that at the moment,
Neela replied, then stood up.
Does he even know about the debt or his mother's fate?
Ayame asked before Neela opened the door.
No, she doesn't,
Neela replied, then left the room. Vera, Fevra, Hana, and their armed escort made it to the main gate of Myopia without any incident. Having the backing of 6 trained mages, including both Fevra and Hana, allowed for a consistent and rather boring journey back. Given that the Noky Elven was locked within a cage and bound from using his color, their return trip only took a few days longer than expected. During their trip, the snow had melted away and the warmth of spring was beginning to come in full force. The group stopped at the gate as another group of guards approached them.
What are you transporting into the city?
One guard asked in fires.
A political prisoner under the orders of Morden Kysha.
Vera answered, and the guard looked confused. He stepped to the cart and looked in, seeing a disheveled Noky Elven tied at the wrists and ankles, then walked back to Vera.
A political prisoner? That's an Elven. What in the void is an Elven doing clear out here?
The guard asked once again in fires.
That's what we are going to find out. Now can we enter the city?
Vera replied with attitude.
Of course, go ahead.
The guard replied and stepped out of the way. Vera kicked her legs and led the caravan into the city. As they made their way through the streets, hundreds of Firen gathered around, glimpsing the first elven to step foot in Myopia. They awed at the sight, talking in hushed tones, wondering what this meant for them. Vera and Fevra rode close together, their black and gray clothing absorbing the heat of the spring sun.
I take it they have no idea why we are escorting the elf in a cage. No doubt Kysha hasn't told the public of the possible war looming over us.
Fevra said, and Vera shrugged.
Now that we have the elf in plain sight, people will begin to wonder what is happening. Remember that the elven haven't been seen this far east in hundreds of years. No doubt that having one here now will spread rumors,
Vera replied. Fevra nodded his head in acknowledgement, then looked out over the crowd, seeing the faces of the poor and rich lining the streets.
Do you think that he will be publicly executed, or will we do it in secret? Given the amount of attention we are garnering, the people would like to know what he did to deserve death.
Fevra asked, and Vera laughed.
If I know Kysha, she will make a big deal of showing off her strength. She didn't become Morden by being known as merciful,
Vera replied.
If I know Kysha, she will be paying well for our success.
Hana, lagging just behind them, spoke up.
I hope you're right. After this I'm sleeping for a week straight, then spending every last gold piece on sake and haven stem. A celebration is well deserved by this point,
Vera said with a smile. They made their way through the upper district, finally reaching the gate to Kysha's estate. They stopped the cart and dismounted their horses just as a group of guards approached them.
Vera, Fevra, Lady Hana, Morden Kysha is awaiting you in her throne room,
the guard said, then gestured for the other guards to take the elven into the mansion. Jinra looked up to the beautiful building that would serve as his prison, then calmly, without hesitation, followed the guards down a separate pathway leading to the dungeon built below the mansion. Fevra, Vera, and Hana followed the guard up the pathway and into the main entrance, where Neela was waiting.
I would have sent for you within the lower district, but your arrival was a few days later than expected. My apologies for not seeing you sooner,
Neela said as she bowed to the three.
Don't worry about it, Neela. Having a cart and prisoner caused us to move slower than we would have been on our own,
Fevra said politely, bowing back. Vera just shrugged, not caring about it either way. Hana, on the other hand, didn't acknowledge the words Neela had spoken, rather she looked around at the various paintings and statues that stood within the hall.
Kysha has been awaiting your report directly. I relayed your letter detailing the situation as soon as it arrived, but hearing it directly from you three is more official than a note,
Neela said, then walked them to the throne room door. She opened it, showing them inside. Both Vera and Fevra, being accustomed to the room, simply stepped up to the edge of the stairs and knelt down, bowing their heads. Hana lagged behind them and awkwardly mimicked the bow.
The hunters have returned with an elven spy. I am grateful to you for ending the necromancer's short-lived rebellion and revealing the elven plot,
Kysha said with great appreciation in her voice in common.
I have informed the other Mordens of the events that have transpired and will be holding a council meeting here in Myopia. However, there is something that I didn't tell them. Neela already has been informed, and as for Cress, she was sent off on a contract just before your arrival. I will be enacting Koyaku at the council meeting along with the execution of the Noky. You will be my enforcers. I am now promoting the Cinder as the Morden's personal guards. You will be publicly known as the Blade of the East and be treated as nobility,
Kysha said, which caused Vera to stand up in shock.
Your Grace, are you certain that you will be able to pull it off?
She asked, and Kysha smiled.
I am the Morden who destroyed the necromantic rebellion, the Morden who rules over the largest city in the east, and the only Morden strong enough to defend our lands from an elven invasion. Once I reveal the existence of the Noky and force a confession from him, the other Mordens will fall in line. The heart has been disconnected from the land for too long. The Morden is old and weak. She has no clue how to protect her people from the ensuing war. I will call for the Mordenship and place the city as the true seat of power in the east,
Kysha replied. Hana looked up to her and sighed.
Your Grace, I mean no disrespect, but I am not a Cinder. I couldn't care less about the political game you are about to start. I have only two goals from taking this job. I was promised payment for destroying the necromancers, and they all lay dead in Shinrin Keep. I was promised escort to the Evergreen and a weapon that I could study in my church, and I have yet to receive either. I am not your guard or assassin. I am a high priestess of the Dark Church. If you would be so kind as to pay me and let me be on my way, I would greatly appreciate it,"
Hana explained. Kysha crossed her legs and leaned back in her throne.
"I was told about your involvement in this mission. Although I don't care for your church, I have allowed it to exist within my city. I understand your hesitation to become a greater part of my council and will grant you your reward for completing the job. As for going to the Evergreen for a weapon, I have to deny this request. Neela told me about the blade that possessed him, and I assume this is the weapon you are referring to. I cannot allow for a known necromancer to wield such a weapon within my city,"
Kysha said, which caused Hana to scowl angrily.
Your Grace, if I may.
Fevra cut in, and Kysha nodded.
I have yet to warn the Lyran of the pending invasion. Hana only agreed to the job on the condition that I take her to the blade. Even if you deny her from taking it, there is no doubt that she would follow me when I leave for the forest. Despite my better judgment, I believe having that sword here could ensure our survival during the invasion.
Fevra continued, which caused Kysha to look at him with confusion.
"What makes you think that?"
she asked, and Fevra stood up.
During our trip to Shinrin, Hana explained that she had seen visions of it in her dreams. She explained that it may possess the ability to teleport. Not just possess people or absorb magic like it did when I encountered it, but teleport from one place to another. After everything we have seen dealing with the necromancers, I wouldn't be surprised if this was true. If we hold that power, we could use it to strike directly at the heart of the Elven. Cut off their leadership one by one without losing any soldiers on our side. We could potentially end the war before it starts.
Fevra explained, and Kysha listened intently.
Who knows what will happen if you try to use that power? It could destroy you, it could fall into the Elven's hands, negating your supposed plan and putting them at an advantage,
Vera said, trying to be the median of the conversation.
"High Priestess Hana, you have been studying necromancy your entire life. What is your belief on the possibility of Fevra's suggestion?"
Kysha asked, and Hana stood up.
"Your Grace, I believe that given enough study, the blade could be used to your advantage. Vera has blessed me with these visions for 2 years. This sword has a part to play in our future, and if we don't recover it, the Elven will discover it anyway. The fog that surrounds the Evergreen is said to be impenetrable to anyone who's not a Lyran, but the Elven are master mages. They will break the spell and storm the Lyran before they could put up their defenses. I hold no love for the Lyran, but if they fall, the blade will fall into the Elven's hands. If we don't act, we will be on the receiving end. Fevra and I will recover it, use its power to teleport back here after warning the Lyran of the invasion, and begin studying its powers. I am only after knowledge, Your Grace. My goddess has gifted me visions of the blade for a reason. I will go after it with or without your blessing,"
Hana explained. Kysha leaned forward, looking over the three, before her, then back to Neela, who stood silently near the door.
"Neela, you are the clan mother. What do you think we should do about this black blade?"
Kysha asked, and Neela stepped forward.
Your Grace, I believe that Hana and Fevra are correct in their assumptions. The Elven were willing to use necromancy and political corruption to weaken us before they stepped foot on the mainland. If the Lyran fall, they would hold a weapon of unknown power. We have 2 necromantic students standing here in your throne room and a man who has directly connected with the blade. There is no other option. We must recover the blade and use its power in our favor,"
Neela replied. Kysha leaned back in her throne again, then uncrossed her legs.
"You have my full confidence, Fevra. You and Hana will recover the blade and bring it back here. However, you will stay here for now to ensure my transition to the position of Dermorden goes smoothly. The council meeting is in 2 months. The other Mordens are already on their way here. As for now, you may return to your sanctuary and rest. I will send your payment tomorrow after I make sure the details are all ironed out,"
Kysha said, and the 4 mages bowed, then left the throne room.